At the outset, I would like to thank Novartis and AOS for having me over here. So I'll just start sharing a screen. So I've put together a simple presentation, which is going to talk about the post-operative management, intraoperative and post-operative management in cataract surgery. So as we all know, I mean, the cataract surgery is by far the most commonly performed surgery in ophthalmology. And definitely, as the techniques and the technology involved in cataract surgery keeps on improving, we are looking at ways in which we can make it even more comfortable and better in terms of patient comfort, outcomes, and safety. So the two major aspects that we are looking at is infection and inflammation. I will be talking about essentially antibiotic usage intraoperatively and postoperatively while addressing infection. And with inflammation, I'll just talk a little bit about the steroid usage. I will stay away from NSAIDs. I think Dr. Tuhin sir will be addressing the usage of Ilibro and other things in preventing CME and postoperative inflammation. So quickly about infections. So really, what we are trying to avoid here is a deadly complication of a very straightforward and very repeatable and very reliable cataract surgery, which is to prevent infectious endophthalmitis. And everything we talk about as far as antibiotics is concerned is really down to preventing endophthalmitis. There has obviously been a growing resistance to the older generation fluoroquinolones, which is very well documented. And with that, over the last decade and a half, we've had the advent of the newer generation fluoroquinolones, which is gadifloxacin, moxifloxacin, and becifloxacin, which I still think has not become routine postoperative use or intraoperative use. But Gati and Moxi, we are using widely across all our cataract surgeries. So one of the advantages that moxifloxacin does have is that compared to the older fluoroquinolones, which requires a single mutation, where just on the topoisomerase 4 alone would be sufficient in giving rise to resistance. The fourth generation fluoroquinolones require a two-hit mutation. So it needs a mutation at the topoisomerase 4 as well as the DNA gyrase, and because of which it is a lot safer, and the incidence of resistance to moxifloxacin is extremely rare. Along with that, we are also looking at the MIC levels of the various antibiotics. And the reason I'm just put up this slide, is that while the older generation fluoroquinolones had excellent coverage against gram-negative organisms, gram-positive organisms form a major portion of our postoperative endophthalmitis. And therefore, the older generation fluoroquinolones were not working very well. Moxifloxacin has an excellent coverage against gram-positive organisms as well. And as given in this data, 69% of endophthalmitis have positive cultures, and of which 94% were gram-positive. The picture is a little different in our country, but having said that, it is gram-positive continues to remain the most common even in our country. And Staph aureus, Staph epidermidis, and Streptococcus continue to remain the most common pathogens which cause postoperative infections, postoperative endophthalmitis. And among the fluoroquinolones, the moxifloxacin has the greatest efficacy of all. So the aqueous penetration of moxifloxacin is also extremely good. It also has something called a dose-dependent toxicity. That is, as we increase the dosage, even a slightly resistant organism can be overcome by the usage of moxifloxacin, and that reaches adequate MIC levels in the anterior chamber with a dose-dependent increase in the toxicity. Methods of prophylaxis, preoperative usage, which is very, very debatable. We don't have sufficient evidence to say that the usage of preoperative antibiotics has any role in preventing postoperative infections. Intraoperative, however, I mean, there has been a lot of debate, maybe even 5 or 7 years back, but I think that has been settled down now, and usage of intracameral antibiotics is almost becoming universal. So with intracameral antibiotics itself, we have different candidates. One of the most commonly used one, especially in Europe, is intracameral cefuroxime. Now, cefuroxime is a gram-negative antibiotic, has excellent gram-positive, slight moderate gram-negative coverage, and the usage was really highlighted in this particular ESCRS study, where they looked at the outcomes of using intracameral cefuroxime. So they had 4 groups, one where there was no antibiotics used, just placebo. In group B, where they used only intracameral antibiotic. In group C, where they used only topical antibiotics. In group D, where they used topical antibiotics as well as intracameral injection. So what was important to see here is there was a 5-fold reduction in the endophthalmitis rate when we used the intracameral antibiotic. What was also surprising to see was that the usage of just a topical antibiotic, which is what we were doing until very recently, was no better than placebo. The incidence of endophthalmitis in group A and group C, where the only difference was no topical antibiotic used, here topical antibiotic was used in group C, the incidence of endophthalmitis was not very different. And at the same time, when you added a topical antibiotic to intracameral injection, it did not bring down the incidence of endophthalmitis by much. So at least none of these numbers were statistically significant, except the fact that there was a 5-fold reduction in the incidence of endophthalmitis when we used an intracameral antibiotic. One of the criticisms of the ESCRS study is that the high incidence of endophthalmitis in the control group of almost 0.35%, which we saw in the previous slide as well. Normally, our incidence in most of the good centers across our country is less than 0.1. So 0.35 is significantly higher than that. So that is one of the reasons which could be biasing the outcomes of this study. Reevaluating the usage of intracameral cefuroxime in our Indian setting, this was a study out of LV Prasad. They found that it did not have any difference in the incidence of endophthalmitis when intracameral cefuroxime was used. Sorry. Yeah. But possibly what could be the reasons for this happening? The main reason for this is that in our country, compared to Europe, where the study was conducted, where a vast majority of the endophthalmitis was caused by gram-positive organisms, in our country, 42% of them are caused by gram-negative and an additional 7% fungal. So almost 50% is not covered by the usage of cefuroxime. And that is possibly one reason why it did not show a similar efficacy in an Indian setting as compared to what was in the Europe. Now, more or less, most of us have switched over to the usage of intracameral moxifloxacin, which is a 4th-generation quinolone, as all of you know, and has an excellent spectrum against both gram-positive and gram-negative. Importantly, it is available preservative-free, and it is commercially available in India and is used widely by most surgeons. So one of the best studies to highlight the usage and the efficacy of intracameral moxifloxacin was done out of Aravind Eye Hospital, where they showed that this was the initial study. They have gone on to do it over 6 lakh and then subsequently 2 million patients. But this was the initial study which paved the way for the usage of intracameral moxifloxacin, where they used it in small incision cataract surgery in one arm, another arm where they did not use it in small incision cataract surgery, and then in phaco with a smaller clear corneal incision where it was not used in a private setting. They found there was a statistically significant reduction in the incidence of endophthalmitis when the intracameral moxifloxacin was used. This was extremely good because this was a large study over over a lakh of patients done over a short duration of 14 months. So this kind of removes any possible geographic variations in endophthalmitis which may have, or any cluster infections which could really bias the outcome. It has a 4-fold decrease in endophthalmitis, which is statistically significant. Rarely any study has shown statistical significance. And this was despite the fact that larger incisions like was used as in SICS. It was in patients through our CAMP patients, lower socioeconomic patients, and 40% of surgeries were performed by surgeons in training. So despite that, there was statistically significant improvement with the use of moxifloxacin. Importantly, it did not show any adverse effects to moxifloxacin. And interestingly, they also did a cost effectiveness study. The cost required to treat 30 cases of endophthalmitis was identical to the cost of actually treating the patients who went on to develop endophthalmitis in the group which did not have moxifloxacin. So it does justify the cost of using intracameral moxifloxacin in all patients. This was reaffirmed in a study which they extended to 600,000 cases. And what was important was it reduced incidence of endophthalmitis even in complicated cases where PCR was done, and where a PCR had happened, and it reduced it by almost 50% when it as opposed to the arm where intracameral moxifloxacin was not used. Moxifloxacin versus cefuroxime definitely has a wider spectrum, moxifloxacin. And as I mentioned earlier, it has a dose-dependent toxicity, which makes it even sufficient to kill resistant organisms like resistant Staph aureus. Vancomycin is the third candidate drug, which has been used widely. It has excellent gram-positive coverage, very effective against MRSA, as we all know. Studies, especially good ones done out of Australia, showed 5 to 9 time reduction in the incidence of endophthalmitis. However, HORV has been reported several times over. There are multiple case reports of HORV, and this is a deadly combination, potentially blinding complication. So something we have to ask ourselves when you're using vancomycin is it acceptable to have a rare side effect? Yes, HORV is a rare side effect, but is it acceptable to have a rare side effect for using an agent which is being used to prevent a rare complication in itself? So endophthalmitis itself is not common, and we are using it in every patient. And even to have a rare HORV in a patient who would have probably not even required the drug is probably not acceptable, and that is why vancomycin has not been used widely in our country. So effective perioperative prophylaxis definitely can decrease. Moxifloxacin seems to be the best drug for using intracamerally, and future novel drug mechanisms hopefully will also have a greater role in this. So I'll quickly move on to inflammation. And when we're talking about inflammation, obviously, most of the patient's discomfort is in the initial postoperative period is produced by the inflammation from cataract surgery. Though routine normal cataract surgery itself does not produce much inflammation, but any difficult cataract surgery or post-uveitic cataract surgeries definitely require an adequate dosage of corticosteroids. Both corticosteroids and NSAIDs have a great role in suppressing the inflammation, and I will restrict my discussion to corticosteroids. So the reason for being here, we are here in a Novartis group, and obviously I'm going to discuss about the usage of Vigadexa versus the other candidate steroids. So first thing is we've seen that moxifloxacin is effective. Now talking about dexamethasone. So dexamethasone, in comparison to prednisolone acetate, which is possibly the most widely used topical steroid, it has better anti-inflammatory potency and has a longer duration of action. The only concern is in the longer duration, it can cause a sharp IOP rise. So the other question which we needed to ask, me being a corneal surgeon, I have never been comfortable combining drugs. So I prefer using antibiotics separately and steroids separately. So when this molecule came about and combining a dexamethasone with moxifloxacin, I was initially a little hesitant. And these were a couple of studies which did help me in understanding it. And they showed that they did a comparative study where they used the combination molecule Vigadexa and as well as using moxifloxacin and dexamethasone separately. And they found that whether it was ocular pain or whether it was the inflammatory signs or the cells in the anterior chamber was all equivalent between both the groups. So that is the combination medication Vigadexa worked just as well as giving Vigamox separately, moxifloxacin separately, and dexamethasone separately. So therefore, the combination worked very well. So at that time when Vigadexa was being introduced, we were using loteprednol and datifloxacin as our routine usage. We used loteprednol for 6 weeks and datifloxacin for just 1 week, and NSAID drops were given for a period of 6 weeks. Now, Vigadexa, they came up with the theme that using it just for 2 weeks and 4 times a day for 2 weeks was sufficient, and that was something which was attractive, which would make it easier for the patient. So we did a head-to-head study comparing usage of Vigadexa for 4 times a day for 2 weeks versus the standard loteprednol, which we were using in tapering doses for 6 weeks, along with datifloxacin for the initial 2 weeks. This was just a quick study done over a period of 2 months. and 336 eyes which received moxifloxacin dexamethasone, and 316 eyes which required loteprednol and gatifloxacin. The age was similar between both the groups. The grade of cataract, as you would imagine, the harder grades of cataract would probably require more phaco power and possibly more inflammation. And the number of the kind of grade of cataract was evenly distributed between both the groups. What we did study as a result, when we looked at it at 2 weeks as well as at 6 weeks, first at 2 weeks, we found that actually the eyes which had more than 0.5 cells was lower in the Vega-Dexa group as compared to the loteprednol and gatifloxacin group. So there was a faster control of inflammation. At 6 weeks, the residual inflammation was similar across both groups. So essentially, Vega-Dexa had a faster onset of action, but despite the fact that it was stopped at 2 weeks, at 6 weeks, there was no higher incidence in rebound inflammation as compared to loteprednol. In fact, after stopping loteprednol at 6 weeks, we had more cases of rebound inflammation than we had with the Vega-Dexa group. The IOP raise was slightly higher in the Vega-Dexa group. I must say that 2 of these patients were patients who were not clearly told that they have to stop after 2 weeks, and they probably assumed that they had to use it for a little longer. And the 2 out of the 3 patients were ones who ended up using Vega-Dexa beyond the initial 2 weeks. So out of all the patients who used it just for 2 weeks, we had only 1 patient out of the 334 who used Vega-Dexa developing a raise in intraocular pressure. So the complications, again, CME incidence was similar in both groups. There was no infection or endophthalmitis in either group to talk about. A limitation, it was a retrospective study. We did not do OCT measurements. We used bromfenac in both groups, maybe using nepafenac or using the newer molecule Ilivro, which is what I'm using today, would have probably have had a slightly different result. But having said that, the purpose was to compare a steroid antibiotic combination with another steroid and antibiotic we were using. So that's why we kept the same NSAID across both the groups, and we did not find any significant difference. And we in fact found that the Vega-Dexa molecule worked slightly better. So using 4 times for 2 weeks obviously has the great advantage of reducing the number of drops that a patient has to use. And you combine that with Ilivro, which is just once a day dosing for 3 weeks, the number of drops which a patient has to use is extremely less. It definitely improves patient compliance with the treatment, decreases the complexity. They don't have to, these old patients don't have to remember the number of drops, the timing of drops, the number of alarms that they set on their cell phone. All of this can really come down. And there's a higher likelihood that they'll receive the proper dosage. Cost-wise also, because they're just buying 1 vial compared to 2 or 3, which they may require when you're using a 6-week regimen, the cost would also actually come down. And this can positively impact clinical outcomes, as I showed in the study earlier. Thank you so much for your kind attention.